Hello everyone and welcome. This is the first video of a new tutorial series where I'm going to teach you the basics of PYGAME. We're going to code a little snake game where we have 60 seconds to move around this tile map and catch the most amount of these red collectibles that appear on random spots. And we also have walls that we have to go around. Now I know this is not a snake, but let's just pretend. The goal is to build a very simple project but give you the foundations of how to code a complete game in PYGAME. We're going to talk about how to make a grid or tile map, how to use classes to create game objects, how to get player input to implement the snake's movement, how to create levels using external text files, how to implement random object generation, treat collisions, and display text and an endgame screen. I hope you enjoy, and let's get straight into it. So the first thing you need to do is to install PYGAME. So if you're on Linux, you can open your terminal. If you're on Windows, you can open your command prompt, or you can even open the PowerShell and type pip install PYGAME. If this doesn't work for you, type python -m pip install PYGAME. And this should install PYGAME for you, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is import PYGAME into our program, and now we need to initialize it. To do that, we just type pygame.init, and this is going to initialize PYGAME for us. Now let's create our game window. So our game window is going to be a variable called screen, and it's going to be equal to pygame.display.setMode. And this is going to take in a tuple with the dimensions of our game window. So let's say screen width equals 600 and the screen height equals 600. I recommend you make this a square. You don't have to use these dimensions, but it just will make it easier for you. So in here, let's put a tuple with the screen width and the screen height, like so. So now if we run this is just going to make a window pop up and it's just going to disappear. Now, how do we make the window linger a little bit more? So we're going to do what's called our main loop. So we're going to set a variable equal to true, run equals true, while run. We're going to do a bunch of stuff inside of here. So the first idea that I want you to be aware of is that everything in PYGAME is going to be an event. So when the user presses or releases a key on the keyboard or on the mouse, or for example, if the user closes the application, closes the game, all of those are going to be events. Let me pull up here the PYGAME documentation. This is a list of every single PYGAME event that could happen. So quit is when the player quits the game. Key down and key up are key presses and key releases. And then mouse button up and button down. All of those are going to be probably the most important events. So the event that we want to handle right now is going to be when the player closes the window. So we're going to do something called an event handler. Basically, the event handler is going to be a loop that's going to iterate through every possible event in PYGAME, and it's going to handle each event. So for each event, it's going to tell the program what to do. So for event in pygame.event.get, so this is going to be a collection of every single possible event in PYGAME. If event.type equals pygame.quit in all caps like this, then run is going to equal false. So what is this doing? So our event handler is going to be a loop that's going to handle every single event that happens in our game. So we're going to loop through each event in pygame.event.get. If the type of that event equals pygame.quit, so equals the user quitting the game, then run is going to equal false. So this is going to be false, and this loop is going to shut down. So the game is going to stop running. And in the end, we just have to say pygame.quit. So just like we initialized PYGAME up here, we also have to quit PYGAME when our game quits. So if I run this now, you can see that our window pops up and stays here. And if I click this button, it goes away. Now, the name of our window is PYGAME window. Now, I want to give an actual name to our game. So in order to do that, here I'm going to say pygame.display.setCaption. And in here, I'm going to give my game a caption. So, snake game. And now if I run this, my window is going to be called snake game. And if I click the X, it's going to quit the application. So this is the basics of how you create a window in PyGame. Now I want to create something called a clock object. So let me say clock equals pygame.time.clock. And this is going to create a clock object for us. So what is this for? Well, the clock object allows us to set a frame rate that's going to be the same independently on the hardware that we're using. So for example, in an older version of a certain hardware, the game is obviously going to run at a slower rate, right? Because the hardware just isn't as good. In a newer, stronger hardware, the game is going to run faster because the hardware is better, and so it's going to make the game run faster. Now, we don't want this to happen. We want the game to run at the same frame rate independently on the hardware that we're using. So in order to do this, we're going to use this clock object, and we're going to set a frame rate equal to 10. Now, like I said, this is going to be a really simple game just so that you can learn the basics of PyGame. We don't need a crazy frame rate, and 10 is just enough. And in here, let me say set frame rate. And I'm going to say clock.tick at the frame rate FPS that we just defined. So this is going to make our game run at 10 frames per second independently on the hardware that we're using. This is very important. So now that you know how to do this, these are the basics of how to create a game window in PyGame and make the game run at a certain frame rate. So thank you so much for watching. In the next video, we're actually going to start coding the game. We're going to start coding the snake. So, like I said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you then.